Welcome, everyone, to Summer Leadership Conference Virtual and Nominations and Elections Workshop. My name is Jacqueline Wilson, and I'm the New York State PTA Leadership Training Specialist. So let's begin. For all information on nominations and elections, the New York State Resource Guide has a great deal of information, Section 7, and that is available on the New York State website. This presentation is being recorded and will be posted on the website along with several accompanying documents that I will place there to assist you in the process of nominations and elections. First of all, the most important thing to remember is that the nominating committee, unlike many committees, is elected. All members must be elected in accordance with the unit's bylaws, and all bylaws state that it must be done at least 60 days prior to your election meeting, but certainly it can be done any time before that. Your election meeting date, month date, is listed in your bylaws. So that is important to note. It should be done anytime 60 days prior to the election date. The bylaws will specify for you the total number of members of the committee, how many are elected from the executive board, and how many from the general membership, as well as if an alternate should be elected. The committee, once elected, elects its own chair, and according to Robert's rules, the first named member of the committee will act as the committee temporary chair to allow for a meeting for the committee to elect the chair. Again, this is a special committee, not a standing committee. The best option for any election is to have a live meeting. You would need to have it in 2 meetings, the executive board meeting to elect those members from the executive board, and then a general membership meeting to elect those members from the general membership. And they can actually be held concurrently or on the same day with, let's say, the executive board being started at 7 o'clock, and they do their election, and then the general membership meeting at 7:30. If available, you might consider having a hybrid meeting to allow participation from more members. We will be talking mainly about about real live meetings, but the New York State website has several webinars to help you with virtual meetings and technology tools for additional information. So I ask you to check that out if indeed your unit is going to do it virtually. So the nominating committee has been elected, the chair has been elected by the committee, and now it's up to the chair to select the time and place for the meeting that all members are able to attend. Only the elected members of the committee may attend. So you want to make sure that it is in a place where everyone is able to get to, a time that everyone is able to meet. If an alternate is elected, they will attend only if another member is unavailable. And again, your bylaws will state whether or not you elect an alternate. The meeting should be held in a private setting, free from distractions. It's a very important role that the nominating committee is doing, and therefore you must have as few distractions as possible so that the meeting can go well, and no one else should be on that meeting or should be giving any input other than all the members of the nominating committee. You must have a copy of your bylaws. Recommendation letters should be sent out by the chair to the membership. You can do this in a backpacks mailing or mailing at home or a Google form. And the thing about a Google form is it can be sent directly to the chair, and of course it will be anonymous. All recommendation letters are anonymous. So whichever way your PTA has done it in the past, or if you haven't done it, try using the Google form. It definitely works well. The chair should have a copy of the current membership list, and all nominees must be a member of the association in order to be elected. When you have the meeting, the bylaws will tell you who are the officers that your unit is going to elect and what is the term of office. If there are council delegates in your unit, they can either be appointed or elected by the membership. That is listed in your bylaws. The month of the election meeting and when the proposed slate of officers should be published. and if there is a required 2-day notice to run from the floor. We'll talk a little bit about those things in a few minutes. Recommendation forms should only be opened at the meeting and in the presence of all committee members. Remember that these are for informational purposes only. Deliberate on who will be the best candidate for each position. If a member of the nominating committee is being considered for an office, they should leave the meeting during the discussion. Consider the kind of leadership that will best achieve the aims and purposes of the PTA. Review the tenure of incumbent officers to determine their eligibility for another term in the same office or in another position. Remember, they are eligible, not entitled. All officers' terms are for 1 year, unless a 2-year term is specified in your bylaws. No person should be automatically nominated for a second term just because they've only served 1 year and they can serve 2 years. It is important to note that. And avoid reshuffling your officers. That is not a way to grow your leadership in the PTA. All deliberations should be kept confidential, and this is extremely important. The work of this committee can sometimes be highly contentious. And so when things start coming out about who said what at the committee about whom, it becomes very hurtful. So all deliberations among the committee members should remain confidential. Once the slate has been completed, the chair then will call potential nominees. If you can't get in touch with one of the nominees, then the committee can allow you to call them after the meeting has been adjourned. And then obviously the chair would let the committee know that that person did accept the nomination. When the chair has received verbal acceptance from the nominees, they should contact the president so that the proposed slate can be published for the membership according to the bylaws. And the president is the one who does the publishing of the slate. The proposed slate should be kept confidential until all nominees have accepted and the announcement has been made to the membership. And usually this is done within a few days after everyone has accepted. The chair will need to send a formal acceptance letter to each nominee that should be signed and returned to the chair. So this is the chair's way of knowing that each of these nominees wish to be elected to the office. The committee should complete a final written report signed by each member to be included in the minutes of the election meeting. Here is a sample nominating committee report to the membership. According to your bylaws, it should be published either 2 weeks or 1 month prior to the election meeting. And here we have the following members have been nominated to serve as officers. You list the year, you list the officers and their names. The election of officers will take place at our meeting on May 25th. So here you are also giving the membership information about the election meeting. You must be a member in order to vote in the election. And you can have a time when membership will be kind of available to everyone. And again, since we are doing online memberships now, it is very easy for a person to join almost immediately. But you want to give yourself some time to make sure that the membership is current and up to date prior to the meeting. So there's nothing wrong with setting a date when anyone who wishes to vote in the election needs to be a member. We will accept memberships until 5 p.m. on May 23rd. Remember, there are no absentee ballots, so you must be present in order to vote. And because, again, membership is so easy to do right now with the virtual and with the member hub, people can join, certainly if they have the time frame 2 days before without any problem. According to our bylaws, notice of intent to run from the floor must be received at least 2 business days prior to the date of the election. And where the notices go, intent to run notices must be received by the nominating committee chair with an email and by 5 p.m. May 23rd, which is 2 days prior to your election meeting. That's important to note that, so that if someone wishes to think about running from the floor, they know they must give notice to the chair 2 days prior. Not all bylaws state that. So again, it is important for the committee to know, and the president, whether or not this 2-day notice is in your bylaws. What if A nominee who has accepted withdraws their name. Something comes up, they decide they really cannot hold that position. If it's prior to the election meeting, the committee can reconvene to nominate another candidate if there's time. If there's no time for the committee to meet, then the office will be considered an open position and will be addressed at the election meeting. And lastly, if a nominee who has already been elected resigns for some reason after they've been elected, it becomes a vacancy and is filled by an election held at an executive board meeting. So on to the election meeting. Notice of the date of the election should be made to the membership at least 30 days prior to the date of the meeting. When you set up your meetings for the year, you look at your bylaws. Let's say your bylaws say June is your annual meeting, that's your election meeting. Then on the calendar that you send home to the membership, you can highlight that as being election of officers. You've already notified them. There's no question, but again, it still should be a separate notice that goes out at the June 15th meeting. We'll be electing our officers, but it is in your calendar already, and that's important for everyone to note so they can make plans if they certainly wish to attend. Follow the guidelines for elections as outlined in the resource guide, section 7. Remember that this is a general membership meeting. Those present who can vote must be a member of the association. We talked about that prior. Make sure that they all have their membership in place prior to the meeting. And the membership chair must have a current membership list. A set of meeting rules can be sent along with the agenda for the meeting. Now, meeting rules are important because walking in, the president says we're going to have our election for offices. Okay, what are we going to do? All right, it's important to set those meeting rules up ahead of time so that there is no question about how the election will proceed. So here is a list of possible meeting rules. These meeting rules should be approved by your executive board and written into your procedures. Again, these are just suggestions. First, if there is only one candidate for an office, the election will be by voice vote. 2, if there is more than one candidate for an office, the election will be by ballot vote. 3, each candidate will be allowed a 2-minute statement stating their reasons and qualifications for running for office. 4, 2 tellers will be appointed to count the ballots and certify the election. 5, voting will close immediately after all ballots have been collected. 6, election will be by majority. And 7, results will be announced as soon as possible after the balloting is finished. So that sets a clear path for how the election is going to be run. So now we get to conducting the election meeting. First of all, most important thing is to make sure that a quorum has been obtained. How do I know my quorum? It is listed in the bylaws. And that your secretary is taking accurate minutes. So the first scenario would be where there are no candidates running from the floor. It is strictly the nominated slate that is being presented to the membership for election. So if no one is running from the floor, then your election can be by voice vote. That is according to our bylaws. The nominating committee chair announces the proposed slate of officers, and the report is filed with the secretary's minutes. So there is where you have your nominating committee report, goes directly attached to the minutes as far as who the nominated members were. The president then will announce each office in turn and allow for a voice vote each time. So for example, he might or she might say, for the office of president, the nominee is Joe Santos. All in favor say aye. You have elected Joe Santos as your president. There's always the question of, well, what about no votes? If nobody doesn't like Joe Santos and doesn't want him as president, but under Robert's rules, when there is but one candidate for an office, that candidate is declared elected. All you need is one person to say aye, and it could be Joe Santos. Members can only vote against the candidate by nominating an alternate candidate. So if there is one candidate, it is just an aye vote. There are no votes. Once all candidates have been elected, you have completed your election and the nominating committee's work is done. The nominating committee is discharged once the election takes place. And second important thing is that the nominating committee chair is only there to present the slate. They do not run the election. It is the president or the presiding officer, if not the president, that runs the election. Scenario number 2 is where you have candidate or candidates given notice of intent to run from the floor. So that speaks to the 2-day notice that we previously mentioned that may be in your bylaws. That's why the bylaws play such an important role in the whole process of nominations and elections. The secretary should have ballots and teller sheets. Teller sheets are just sheets to tally the results. These can be prepared in advance since you will know the names of the candidates for each office prior to the election meeting. So the secretary can prepare these ballots for each office prior to the meeting, and that's a very helpful time-saving thing. The nominating committee chair will read the proposed slate of officers, and taking one office at a time, the president will ask the chair if there were any notices of intent to run received. Maybe only there's a challenge for the office of vice president and secretary. Maybe there's only a challenge for the office of treasurer, but each office is taken separately to allow that to be determined from the nominating committee chair information that has been received. Any office for which there's more than one candidate must have a ballot vote, and each office that is being contested should have a separate vote. Instructions for voting should be given by the president. If you have ballots prepared ahead of time, okay, there should be a membership list so that only members, current members, get ballots. And then the president can obviously write the names on the board so that the names are known to everybody. Well, the names will be on the ballot already, or if they're not on the ballot, then the president would write the names on the board and check only one name or write in only one name, fold the ballot in half, hand to the teller, etc. Or if you have a ballot box, place it in a ballot box. Again, these are all things that should be communicated. You don't just say, okay, pick up a ballot and vote. You really need to give clear instructions so that there's no question about the election being run properly. Scenario number 3, candidates may run from the floor. If your bylaws do not state that someone needs to give 2-day notice to run from the floor, then anyone who wishes to can be nominated from the floor at the election meeting. So the president will announce the nominating committee's choice for each office. Nominating committee chair does their slate of officers. First, the president then asks if there are any nominations from the floor. Again, it is open to anyone, but only if stated in your bylaws that there is no 2-day notice needed. A candidate can self-nominate or be nominated by someone else, but they must accept the nomination. In this case, the nominee should be there at the meeting. They can't accept it if they're not there at the meeting. Prior to the election, each candidate may be given the opportunity to speak. Again, that would be according to your meeting rules. And it seems only fair that you would ask people to be able to see each candidate separately and hear a little bit about them and their qualifications. Names of candidates should be written down on a board or easel or projected on a screen, since we have those technologies now. Ballots are distributed, and again, instructions from the president should be given regarding the ballots. So you could have them come up and check off their name on the membership list and be handed a ballot. You could have the membership chair go around and check each person's membership card if they have it available, or check her list to make sure that they are on her membership list. So again, ballot instructions are given, such as print first and last name of candidate, fold the ballot in half, hand the ballot to the teller, or place in the ballot box. So the same meeting rules applies that you will appoint tellers, you'll have a ballot box, or the tellers will collect the ballots. Once the results are announced, the election for that office is over, and the election for the next office can proceed until all officers have been elected. Announcing the results. This is important. It needs to go in the minutes secretary is doing. The tellers hand the tally sheet to the president, and the president announces the results. Total votes cast, 40. Needed for election is 21. Remember, it's by majority. Joe Santos received 25. Jane Doe received 11. There were 4 invalid ballots. Maybe there was no name on them, or they just put initials, or they didn't follow the directions. Those are just considered invalid ballots, and they're not counted in the tallies. You have elected Joe Santos as your president. Congratulations. And the secretary records these results in the minutes just as they are listed here. And now you have a record of it. You have a record of the nominating committee slate of office proposed. You have a record of your election. The process of elections and nominations can at times become highly contentious and spark controversy. In my role as a region director and as a field support coordinator, so many times there were questions about nominations and elections not being done correctly, not being done fairly, not following bylaws. So if your unit is concerned that there may be a contested or controversial election, you can contact your region director and they can come and intervene or at least give you some guidance on how to do it fairly and accurately. Having the election conducted by an impartial party can help dispel any notion that the election is not being fairly completed. That's extremely important. By following the processes and procedures outlined in this presentation, you can assure your membership that your PTA is being transparent and will enable them to have continued confidence in and support for their leadership. Thank you for attending. My contact information is on this slide here, and we will be taking questions in the chat box. So if you have any questions that you need to be answered, please put it into the chat box at this time. Thank you.